Hi everyone, my name is Jaron Schneider with Imaging Resource, and with me today I have the new Surface Pro laptop, Microsoft's latest iteration of their tablet computer hybrid.
From a hardware perspective, the computer is not Microsoft's most powerful mobile computing machine. The Surface Book receives that accolade, but it's no slouch either. It can be outfitted with one of three Intel processors, the 7th generation Core M3, the i5, or the i7, and one of three graphics, Intel HD Graphics 615, which goes with the M3, 620 with the i5, and 640 with the i7. The base model will retail for $800, while the fully spec'd model will retail for $2199 with a 512GB SSD or $2699 with a 1TB SSD. For this review, we had the Intel Core i7 and Iris Plus Graphics 640 card with the 512GB SSD. The battery life is said to be 13.5 hours of video playback, and we found it to be pretty much all-day use, even when tasked with something more processor-heavy, such as retouching in Adobe Photoshop.
Part of what makes the Surface Pro so appealing to some photographers and creative professionals is both the new pen and the new dial. Both of those accessories work with the new Surface Pro, and we thought it would be worth looking into how two different professionals in the creative industry would use both of these tools. We had a clothing designer and stylist take a look at the tablet for sketching out clothing design, and we also had a photographer retoucher take a look at the setup for how that would work for mobile retouching.
Jessie Shroyer, who is an accomplished stylist and clothing designer, told us that she felt the only real difference between the Surface Pro and the analog pen and paper was the feeling you would have to get used to of the slickness of the screen versus how a pencil or pen and paper feel. The way that the pen moves across the screen takes a little getting used to, and the tip of the pen doesn't go exactly where you might think it will, but does not take long to get the hang of. Handing the Surface Pro to retoucher Chris Lambeth, we asked him to start retouching an image using the previous model Surface pen, the one that shipped with the Surface Book. And midway through retouching, we swapped it with the new pen that you can get along with the new Surface Pro. He said it was immediately and noticeably different. It just felt a lot better to use the new pen than the old one. It was significantly more responsive, and slight fine-tunings done to the pen's actual physical design makes hitting the buttons easier and more natural. As far as doing real retouching work, Chris was pleasantly surprised at how much he could do with the tablet, though he wasn't particularly sold on it quite yet because of the need for a keyboard. That brings us to talk about the Surface Dial. The Surface Dial is a very cool idea, and one that we are excited to see expanded upon in the future. Unfortunately, right now the dial does very little outside of a select few Microsoft apps. Though Adobe has shown they have beta versions of Photoshop connectivity, such connectivity was not available at the time of this review. The best we could do was undo, zoom, adjust volume, and other very basic features. If we eventually can map our own keys to the dial, like Alt or Option, retouchers will be much more on board with the Surface line. Presently, to do proper retouching, post-productionists will use hotkeys to quickly move among tools and sampling points. At current, to really get in there and retouch a photo, you have to treat the surface like how you would a piece of paper you were going to write on. As you can imagine, this leaves very little room for the keyboard. This will dramatically slow down the speed of a retoucher's workflow and therefore makes the Surface system far less viable until the dial can fill those gaps.
On paper, the specs of the Surface Pro look pretty impressive, but what we wanted to do was really test it. So we took some images yesterday on the beach using an X1D Hasselblad mirrorless camera, which takes 50 megapixel photos. We wanted to see how this computer was able to handle really large RAW files and if there would be any slowdown during retouching, opening, or viewing any of the files.
In the video thus far, we've shown images being manipulated on the Surface Pro. If I told you those were the 50 megapixel images from the Hasselblad X1D, would you be surprised? Well, they are, and I was actually pretty surprised myself at how well the Surface Pro handled them. There was no lag, no freezing, no issue whatsoever. The Surface Pro 100% is capable of handling the editing workload of the X1D files, and therefore will be able to handle the images produced by 95% of the cameras available on the market today. The Surface Pro has 6 total ports, but they aren't perhaps what you were hoping for or expecting. It has a full-size USB 3.0, headphone jack, microSD card reader, and a mini display port. The other ports are the Surface Connect, which is for the charger, and a keyboard cover port. That's it. And that, unfortunately, is the only real glaring problem with the Surface Pro. It is pretty challenging as a pro to fully take advantage of a computer that limits you to one port, and that one port is now the aging USB 3.0. That, mixed with the lack of an SD port, puts the same complaints many toss at the Apple MacBook Pro right back at Microsoft.
To learn more about the Microsoft Surface Pro and to read our full written review, head on over to imagingresource.com.